What's going on, guys? Hope you're doing well. So I'm back with the second episode of Q&As. So just still working down the list of the questions that I got asked, which is awesome. And then I've had a few extras kind of put on there as well, which is great. So I will just keep going with these. We'll see how many questions I actually get through. I may spend a little bit longer on some, a little bit shorter on others, just based off where I end up going with them. And as always, they are my opinion, my experiences. There might not necessarily be a right or a wrong answer, but you will get my honest take on some of these things. I do have hiccups as well, so apologies about that. I'm drinking a Coke Zero vanilla. Okay, it's half price in Aldi for £8, so you better believe I'm on that absolute steal. Anyway, so let's move on to the first question then. So the first one was, what are your thoughts on Landmine University? So if you're not aware, there is a Landmine University on Instagram, a business, I imagine. They do sell courses and products and those types of things. As you know, Landmine University, Squat University, there are 1,000,001 different businesses out there that have highly specialized themselves as a way of standing out in a crowded market. And as a result, sometimes you do have to try and push that product or push that thing as a superior method of training in order to sell it, in order to kind of convince people of its worth. Same with, velocity-based training, occlusion training, sprinting, plyos, kettlebells, the list goes on and on. It's just a way of making yourself stand out from a marketing standpoint. Do I think that Landmine University is going to completely change sports performance for the better? No. Do I think it's the worst thing that's ever happened to strength and conditioning? No. I think it's exactly what I just said there. It's just a way of somebody trying to push their thing, and standing out. I think if you decide to, be a kettlebell guy, a Landmine guy, a VBT guy, ultimately you are trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. If you're trying to really kind of get into the nitty-gritty of sports performance, that is my honest perspective. You've got 1,000,001 different tools out there that are going to be useful for 1,000,001 different contexts and environments and athletes and time of the year. If you just decide that Landmine is the best, then you're not going to be able to tick all those boxes in a really effective way. And there's that saying of many roads lead to Rome. And I do agree, many roads do lead to Rome, but there's also really effective ways of just going from A to B, and there's really ineffective ways of just circling around 1,000,001 different points and taking longer routes to get to Rome. Okay. Do I use a Landmine? Absolutely. Okay. I think there's really good examples of when a Landmine is effective. I use it for, the majority of the time I will use a Landmine. I use it for core work. I like Landmine rotations. I like Landmine press variations as a way of kind of spearing the shoulder a little bit, because you have a little bit more stability. With a Landmine, obviously, you can go left and right with it, but you can't go as much forward and backwards. So it controls the degrees of freedom. It's kind of a free weight exercise, but not because of that kind of axis point. So you get more load. It's like that in-between point between true free weight and a machine. It's kind of like somewhere in the middle. But yeah, I use it for lateral squats, lateral lunges, pressing variations, use it for some core variations. But is it everything? Is it going to completely change the game? No. I saw a good quote the other day, so I wrote it down, and he was speaking more around posture, and there's a lot of different postural kind of systems out there, but you can use the system without becoming the system. Okay, so you can use Landmines, you can use VBT, you can use occlusion training, blood flow restriction training without that being your whole thing. So I just thought it was really nice, and I agree with it. Landmines are great, but they're not greater than any other modality. So that's my thoughts on Landmine. Probably just more of a marketing thing than a legit claim to sports performance. So the next question then was, thoughts on internships. And I know where this question came from. It's a little bit provocative. It's trying to get a ramble out of me. I can see where it's going. So there was a little bit of a witch hunt going on Twitter. It's funny how different social media platforms have different personalities and attract certain people. Twitter is generally, the more conversational based, a little bit more debatey, a little bit bitchy, is my perspective. It does get used for a lot of good as well, and every platform has good and bad, and it depends who you follow and all those things. So yeah, there's a little bit of a witch hunt on Warwick University. So Warwick put out an advert for its internship. So I was the lead S&C coach at Warwick a few years ago. So I know the university really well, and I know the internship really well. And the university itself has a lot of issues, but I actually think the strength and conditioning department was probably one of the better things of the university. I'm probably biased in that. But the witch hunt was about this advert went out, not requesting, but advertising for people to approach them for 2 years of an internship. Okay, roughly 10 hours a week. And as an internship, it was voluntary, so you didn't get paid for it, but you did get £1,000 of CPD budget over the 2 years, and it was split up £350 in the first year, £650 in the second year, and you could use that on whatever you want. Usually it's used for like the UKSCA or to put you through a certain certification or course or something like that. And there's a witch hunt, people saying this is fucking unacceptable, that's less than minimum wage and all those things, and don't get me wrong, I love that these conversations are happening to try and challenge the industry on some really bad practices and exploitation of workers and all those things. But this was like a mob type mentality, and a lot of people were defending it, which was great. And I really like to see that, because all the people that were kicking off, I guarantee have never been to Warwick, and I guarantee have never seen the internship in action. Okay, because it was solid. Okay, it was good. It was a really, really good internship, and it developed a lot of great coaches, and you got out of it a lot. So some internships use interns as free labor. Absolutely, some do. Some internships they have joint goals of using interns as a way of sustaining a performance program and giving back to the student athlete through well-coached sessions, at the same time as supporting interns into developing better. Okay, so you have different approaches. You have like two opposite ends of the continuum, and some internships fall in the middle, based off essentially where their vision is and what they actually want from you. I've been a part of a few different internships as an intern and as somebody that's kind of a little bit more on the senior side. I say senior, I'm 28, I've still got gray hairs, but, I've been on that side of it as well. And I'm just going to give you a few perspectives on different internships I've been a part of. So I was part of Sheffield Hallam University. So we had to give up 4 hours of our time a week, and that was usually one shift. And as part of that, you would probably work with 2 different teams in that 4 hours. So you may shadow, you may just be somebody that's just watching and observing and taking things in, taking notes. You may be somebody that was taking the warm-up. You may have more of an active role in the session, or maybe you actually led the team itself. Okay. Throughout the Sheffield Hallam internship, you would progress from like a junior intern that was more shadowing to a lead intern where you'd lead a team, into a graduate role where you'd get paid. And then the next step after that was assistant or a lead role. Okay, so last 3 being paid, first 2 voluntary. As part of that 4-hour shift, you get an opportunity to coach a lot of different athletes, receive feedback from senior coaches on your practice, on programming, those types of things. You didn't get paid. You did receive, I think it was like 1 hour, 1 to 2 hours a month. You would go through something specific with the head of S&C or the assistant coaches, and that might be speed training, plyos, good warm-ups, those types of things. So like basic topics that are going to help you to progress. Okay, because ultimately what we're saying here, as a junior intern, you are learning your craft. Okay, you're learning, that's it. Should you get paid for a job you can't do very well? No. That my perspective is, if you can't do the job incredibly well, then you don't deserve to get paid. And there is a certain amount of putting in your time to learn your craft before you can earn money. Does that mean that internships instantly kind of exclude people that need to earn money in order to survive? Yes, it's not a perfect system. I know some good examples of people that had to work their absolute bollocks off in order to, one, sustain themselves, sustain a family by working in a bar, as well as trying to chase their dream of studying for strength and conditioning and doing internships. Okay, they had to work incredibly hard. I also know examples of people that came from a little bit more of a wealthy family, and their family put them through education really easily. They didn't have to work, so they could say yes to as many different opportunities as possible. Should we frown upon those people? No. It is what it is. Everyone has a different circumstance. Okay. So yeah, that was Sheffield Hallam, and it was awesome. A lot of great practitioners have come through Sheffield Hallam. Just had a really good community vibe, actually. And I think the opportunities that you get offered when you're on an internship are great, because there's always things that come through a university. Do you want to go and coach water polo in Rotherham? Okay, you get paid a tenner. Do you want to go do it? Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. You know, it gives you an opportunity to work with youth athletes, elderly athletes, people that don't speak English, disabled, you know, para, elite. You've got so many different people you can work with there. So that was the first one. So it gave you a really broad understanding of lots of different sports. The other internship I was part of was the EIS work placement. So not quite an internship, but very similar vibes. So I was full-time there for 8 weeks. It was. So, you know, early starts, 3 p.m. finish, that type of thing. I was working with para table tennis, GB boxing, and some multi-sport. So my experience there was, you have the opportunity to really hone in on the 1% of performance. There was a lot of technology, VBT, force plates, that type of thing, which was great. You also get an opportunity as an intern in an institute, an EIS setting, to see how the pieces fit together. Okay. Whereas at Hallam, the strength and conditioning was kind of in a silo. That is its own thing. You know, as an S&C coach at Hallam, you probably had more contact time with the athletes than the actual sport coaches. For an athlete, that's a bit mad, but that's just the way it worked. You know, it just is what it is. Probably more participation based, whereas EIS, it is performance based. You are evaluated on your ability to win gold medals and excel in sport. And that's what you got. You got a really in-depth experience of seeing how those pieces fit together. How does the S&C coach communicate with the sport coach, with the physio, with the psych, with lifestyle support, with the athlete? Okay. You get to see them at practice. You get to see how the S&C coach validates their decisions and all those different things. So you get a very concentrated exposure. Okay. And I personally do feel like in all the different domains within strength and conditioning, you've got university, like collegiate setting, you've got schools, you've got pro sport, you've got private sector. I feel like the EIS and Olympic sport is probably like the highest caliber of strength and conditioning practice. And what I mean by this is, I think they have an opportunity to really delve into the nitty gritty in the 1% because of the way the logistics are set up. You know, usually you will have an S&C coach that is solely responsible for rowing S&C. They don't have to worry about filling up water bottles. They don't have to worry about too much travel that you have in pro sport. You've got really well-trained, good athletes and good at their sport. So it ticks that box of, you know what, we can try different means of getting them better. So yeah, I really rate my experience there, and the same with Pepperdine. So I went to America. I don't know how many years it was now. It was in my second and third year. Went to America, Malibu, California, Pepperdine University for 6 weeks. So again, it was voluntary. In fact, I paid $3,000 to do it. And it was probably the hardest I've ever worked in my life, actually. You know, we're talking like 3:30 a.m. wake ups, so that we could get into the gym for 5 a.m. to get a session in with the staff, because we'd train before work. First session started at 6. You would have sessions going on all day, a little bit of lunch, a little bit of downtime, a little bit of intern development. You would then have some external clients coming in once the student athletes had finished, and you'd get home about 7:30, 8 p.m. So if you went to bed as soon as you got into the house, you probably wouldn't get enough sleep. Obviously, you still have to prep food. You still need to unwind a little bit, speak to your family, all those things. But it was an awesome, awesome experience. You got some good sun. I got to see how America does strength and conditioning, how they treat things slightly different. Their athlete sample is different. You know, we were working with D1 athletes in basketball. It was totally different to the way we treat our Sheffield Hallam athletes, because they were, you know, more socially based. We did have some really good athletes that were scholarships and things like that, but it was a different ball game. We, at that university, I think a year of education was 100 grand or something, you know, dollars. So over a 3 or 4 year degree, you've got $250,000 to $500,000 worth of education fees that the university will pay you because you're a scholarship athlete. So you are basically a pro athlete, and they treat you like that, even though you wasn't, you know, you wasn't pro, but you were. So you saw huge control over the athletes and what they did. So it was pro in that sense, you know. Nutrition was taken care of, sleep, hydration, all that. You had talks and you had people in place for everything. And the strength and conditioning was extremely high quality. It was very specialized, very sport specific, as opposed to globally just trying to train the system for huge outputs. I saw a lot of like stuff that I probably wouldn't do now, but, you know, banding certain exercises that are very similar to the sport in action. But it was great to see, and it was great to see how they operated together in a slightly different context. But yeah, it was cool. It was a really good experience, and something that I think's really shaped me as a coach. It showed me a strength and conditioning department that was extremely hardworking. Okay, and I know you can't work too hard, but I would say work too hard. Didn't really have much of a work-life balance, or at least my perspective of it. I wouldn't want that lifestyle for too long. 6 weeks was enough for me, you know, of working 80-hour weeks, Monday to Saturday, having a Sunday off. It wouldn't give me an opportunity to do all the things I want to do in my everyday life, but I'm super happy that I did it. And I think I've seen the extreme. Okay. So I want to make sure I stay away from that a little bit. The staff, you know, I made some great friends out there, some great, you know, peers. We trained really hard. Me and the head coach, who used to pick me up on the way through, which was extremely kind of him. We hit it off really well. So we enjoyed training really hard, and that's cool. So we did a lot of training together. So we train twice a day, Monday to Friday, and we would train 3 times a day on a Thursday and Tuesday, Thursday. So we trained a lot. Okay. And one of the objectives is, or one of the things we spoke about, is we were shit at pull-ups really bad, wanted to be better at them. And we were like, right, let's take a super, super high frequency, high volume, high intensity approach. So we basically did pull-ups every day. Okay. And we just increased it, and we pushed it and we pushed it and we pushed it. So I think I was there for 6 weeks. We started off at 50 pull-ups per day, Monday to Friday. We then went to 70, 90, 110, 130 every single day, Monday to Friday. We covered a lot of pull-ups. We spiced it up. We did some waves. We did AMRAPs. We did different grips. We did different handles. We did some assisted, some resisted. We did it on the minute. We did a lot, and it was cool. You know, I left the best I've ever been at pull-ups, as you can imagine. My elbows felt like shit, and it's like, well, yeah, obviously. But you know what? That bounce back from that time was amazing, just from like a global perspective. Like I think I really dug myself into a little bit of a deep hole. I guess you could say kind of functional overreaching. And it took me about 2 or 3 weeks to have really good sessions again after my time in America. But I was PBing everything PB. It didn't matter if it was bench press, if it was chin up for weight, squats, deadlifts. Like I was in a really, really good situation. Body felt awful, but performance wise was smashing it. Moving on then. So I was part of a really good group of internships there that taught me something slightly different from all of them. I've been on the staff side for Warwick, where I really enjoyed being on the other end and actually trying to really invest in an intern and give them the opportunities and give them some really solid feedback. into their performance and in the ways that we can kind of help them develop. And I really enjoyed that. I got really good at being able to give feedback. I think before my time at Warwick, I probably used to dance around issues of feedback a little bit. You know, if you had to give something that was pretty brutal or pretty critical, that was negative, previously I'd probably be like, yeah, you know, and it just wouldn't land. You know, if you don't give direct feedback, it doesn't land effectively, and nobody gets better from that. You've just tried not to hit somebody's feelings, which is, you know, it is what it is. Whereas after my time at Warwick, I was very kind of direct with things. Okay, address what was the problem, and then you build from that. What we're going to do now, okay? And I've had some brutal feedback in the past. I've had some soul destroying feedback, but ultimately it makes you better. I've had it from an interview perspective and from an internship perspective, but it all is there for a reason. So just to wrap up my ramblings then of like internships, it's a huge part of getting better. I know people that are great coaches without being an internship. I know great coaches that have come out of internships. I know shit coaches that have come out of internships. But I think the opportunity to get hands-on with a variety of people in a environment where it won't matter as much, where you can make mistakes before you actually get to that paid position, is extremely valuable. So I'm all for it. I am all for it. So if your university around you, if you're at university or at college, or you know of like different football clubs that do internships, I would highly suggest doing it, because I think it will make you a better practitioner and a better coach, and I think it will make you well-rounded. That is my perspective. It's not right, it's not wrong, but you know, all I can do is kind of speak about that. Okay. So next question then, speed training. What are my thoughts when beginning speed training with an athlete? Okay, kind of broad. So I'm going to give you some suggestions of what I think about when I like write speed programs, and how that actually fits into the grand scheme of things. Is you want to look at the goal, okay? See where your pinch points are. Okay, so I spoke in the last Q&A around rugby, and you know, if you play on a Saturday game, you don't want to sprint the day before, you don't want to sprint the day after. So there you've just restricted a 7-day week to, okay, we can't train on 3 of the days, we've got 4 days there. A pretty standard way of going about it for team sports, you know, rugby, football, American football, those types of things, is aim for between 1 and 3 speed sessions a week. Okay, how you structure that just depends. Okay, but some of the things you want to think about with speed is acceleration focus, okay, max velocity focus, and then change of direction. Okay, they're like 3 different types of speed that you need to try and account for, and maybe not every sport will need all 3. Okay, depending on what they're doing. Other sports may need more than others. It's just one of those things. You're going to have to suss out your needs analysis and see what they need at any given time. But some of the things I think about is volume wise, when you're structuring a speed session, you want between, let's say, 150 to 300 meters worth of speed volume kind of built up. And that's a rough guideline. If you're ever in doubt, stay at the bottom end. And I'm not talking warm-ups. Warm-ups don't count. We're talking about live reps. I try and, if I had the choice, I would do an acceleration and a change of direction day, okay, once a week. And then I would do a max velocity day once a week, okay. In the acceleration and change of direction based day, you're talking about short and sweet reps, okay. So the acceleration, 10-meter reps, 20-meter reps, that kind of thing, between 150 and 300 meters worth. You want to try and rest for about 60 seconds per 10 meters sprinted as a rough rule of thumb, just to make sure that you're actually recovered and you're not just turning it into conditioning. When you do change direction based drills, I add on, and I don't know if anybody else does this. This was just my rationale behind it. I equate the volume. So let's say you do a 5-meter, let's say you do a 505 test. Okay. So a 5-meter run in, do a 180 cut, 5-meter run out. Okay, so 10 meters worth of volume, which would be 60 seconds worth of rest. I add on 30 seconds for every change of direction that you do within that test. So I would rest 90 seconds for a 505 if I'm trying to be fully recovered. Okay, and you have the ability to do so. So yeah, I would do acceleration and change direction in the same day. If I didn't have a third day to play with. Acceleration is we're focusing on horizontal projection, pushing the ground back and down, pushing yourself forward. It's long ranges of motion, it's huge drives. I would use things like resisted sprints, sled sprints, kneeling starts. I would do those, and you're going to get a lot of reps in because the meterage is really short. So you might get 12 reps of 10 meter sprints in an acceleration day, no problem. That's cool. That's fine. If you're going to try and pair your sprint days with a focus, it's horizontally focused. Okay. It's very strengthy. Okay. So you're talking things like hip thrusts, they say that that's supposed to help acceleration. You're going to try and pair your horizontally focused plyometrics and jumps, like broad jumps, still doing pogos, triple jumps for distance, those types of things on your acceleration focus. For your max velocity focus, it's more of a vertical bias. Okay. So you would do counter movement jumps, you would do repeat bounding for height, those types of things. An example is you might do 30 meters of actual as a rep. Okay, so going back to the actual prescription, 30 meters per rep or 40 meters per rep, you might do 5 or 6 of those. Okay, still keeping within that bandwidth of 150 to 300. You would rest a lot longer between that because you've spent more time going, there's more distance covered. So you're talking 3, 4, 5 minutes rest in between, which seems a lot when you start comparing it to how we kind of treat things in the gym sometimes, but it's necessary. You're going to have greater stress going to the hamstrings with max velocity. There's a lot more speed involved. It requires a lot more from the hamstring. So you want to be a little bit more careful with that. Where it sits in the week. What did you train before? You basically want to go into a sprint session feeling fresh. And you want to make sure that the sprint session doesn't come before a heavy sport practice session. So I'm kind of just giving you my thoughts as they pop into my head here. They're not really coming out in any particular order. I think I've covered quite a bit there, just in terms of how much you actually do, what your focus is going to be. And ultimately, you've just got to make sure it fits within your week. I just gave you loads there, but it needs to fit within your structure. Okay. You've got to kind of look at where your pinch points are, where your sessions are that can be high intensity, where your sessions are that can't be high intensity because you've got other things. If you don't have space to run a 30 or a 40, what else can you do? I actually saw that there's a coach called Mike Young. He works out in America as a track and field coach. He has a thing called a speed cannon, which is it's basically 2 big resistance bands that you will have your partners holding them, stretching them out. Okay, you will basically back up into them, so your bum or your lower back is against the band. You will keep walking back. They're keeping tension on, and then essentially when you're ready, they're going to pull you forward. So essentially, you're getting an opportunity to get up to max velocity super quick. I haven't done it. Actually, I've done it once, more for fun. I haven't used it for training, but it's assisted. It'd be hard to quantify how much you're putting into it. I know there's exogenies and those types of things that you can get a little bit of an assisted element from, I believe. You could be towed, so getting a partner to just pull you along and do the same thing. Speed training, what else? Yeah, I think I've covered a fair bit there. Cool, sweet. So I'm going to leave it there. So I've been rambling on for about 30 minutes. I don't want these to be super lengthy. If anybody has any questions on what I've kind of covered today and has anything that they're like, actually, I disagree. What have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Fire those through. I definitely wouldn't have covered everything. I think if you've ever spoke to yourself for 30 minutes it's a little bit weird. You know, you don't have somebody to bounce back off. And sometimes you will kind of look back and be like, oh, I should have said this, should have said that. But in the moment, you just kind of forget because you're kind of on autopilot. So awesome. Yeah. So if you've got any other questions, feel free to kind of send those over to me. But yeah, awesome.